The desolate discovery. The sky above the barren planet of Zadra shimmered in shades of sickly green and rusted copper, casting an otherworldly glow over the desolate landscape. Jake Hayes adjusted the visor of his helmet, scanning the horizon with a growing unease. The rocky plains stretched endlessly before him, a wasteland devoid of life, save for the occasional gust of wind that stirred the dust into swirling eddies. This was supposed to be a simple reconnaissance mission, but something about this planet felt off, too quiet, too still. In the center of this desolation stood an obelisk, an enormous black monument that loomed ominously over the terrain. Its surface was smooth and glistening, adorned with strange, glowing symbols that pulsed with an eerie light. Towering at least 10 stories high, the obelisk cast long shadows across the ground, a stark contrast to the barren surroundings. Every few seconds, it emitted a low, resonant hum, akin to a giant heartbeat, reverberating through the ground beneath Jake's boots. Jake had been an interstellar explorer for years, witnessing the remnants of countless alien civilizations. Typically, these artifacts were benign relics, remnants of past glories, but this obelisk felt different. It pulsed with life, and instinctively, he knew it was more than just a relic. With his plasma pistol gripped tightly, Jake took a cautious step forward, his instincts screaming that something was fundamentally wrong. "Hayes, you there?" The voice crackled in his earpiece, breaking the tension of the silence. It was Commander Davis, his mission control officer from the ship orbiting above. "Yeah, I'm here," Jake replied, his eyes still locked on the obelisk. "I found something." "What is it?" Davis asked, her tone sharp with anticipation. "It's big, some kind of alien tech. Could be a power source or maybe even a weapon," he explained, the dread creeping into his voice. "Any signs of life?" she pressed, her urgency evident. "No," Jake hesitated, glancing around, but the oppressive quiet only heightened his unease. "But it feels wrong. I'm thinking I should destroy it, just in case." "Hold off," Davis ordered, her voice firm. "We don't know what we're dealing with. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. We need a full report first." Jake clenched his jaw, feeling the tension mount. He understood the protocols, he knew the rules. Yet, every fiber of his being urged him to act. Something about the obelisk made his skin crawl, and as he stepped back, he noticed the glowing symbols on its surface seemed to shift and morph, shimmering as if reality itself walked around it. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath him. Jake froze, heart racing. The hum of the obelisk grew louder, vibrating through his bones. As he looked down, he noticed a faint crack appearing in the dust-covered ground. Panic surged through him, and before he could process it, a sharp, high-pitched whine sliced through the air, cutting off his transmission with Davis. The symbols on the obelisk glowed brighter, pulsating in rapid succession until they created a rhythmic throbbing that resonated deep within Jake's chest. The air thickened around him, pressing down as if an unseen force encroached on his mind. Without another thought, he raised his plasma pistol, finger hovering over the trigger. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't benign. He couldn't afford to wait and see. With a swift motion, he pulled the trigger. The plasma bolt streaked through the air, slamming into the base of the obelisk with a blinding flash of light. For a split second, everything fell silent. Then, chaos erupted. The obelisk shuddered violently, the glowing symbols flashing white-hot as cracks spiderwebbed across its surface. A deafening roar filled the air, and the ground shook beneath Jake's feet, sending him stumbling backward. He barely managed to stay upright as the structure began to collapse in on itself, disintegrating into a mass of dark, oily smoke. But the most shocking event was yet to come. As the obelisk crumbled, the sky above Jake split open, a blinding tear of light appearing in the atmosphere. Swirling and crackling with raw energy, the tear expanded, revealing a massive shadowy figure descending from the heavens. Jake's eyes widened in horror as he realized he had awakened something far beyond his comprehension. He had no time to react, no time to run. The Zori had arrived. When he regained consciousness, Jake found himself lying on a cold, metallic surface. The room was stark, filled with sterile white light that made him squint. He groaned, blinking against the brightness, and his first instinct was to move, to get up. But as he tried to rise, he quickly realized his limbs were bound, locked into sleek silver restraints that hummed with an unsettling energy. Where am I?" he muttered, his voice hoarse and thick with confusion. "You are in judgment," a cold, mechanical voice replied. The words sent shivers down his spine. Jake turned his head, finally noticing several figures standing in the shadows. They were tall and slender, their frames ethereal and graceful. As they stepped forward into the light, Jake's stomach twisted. The Zori were unlike any species he had encountered before. Their skin shimmered like polished silver, and their large, black eyes reflected no emotion, no mercy. They moved with a precision that felt almost mechanical, their long limbs extending and retracting with an unnerving fluidity. One of them, seemingly the leader, stepped forward, its gaze piercing into Jake. He could feel cold sweat breaking out across his skin. "You have committed a grave offense," the Zori leader intoned, its voice devoid of any compassion. I didn't know," Jake stammered, fear gripping his heart. "I thought it was dangerous." The Zori leader didn't blink, its expression unchanged. "The obelisk you destroyed was not merely a tool. It was the core of our reproductive system. Thousands of our females are now infertile because of your actions." The words hung in the air, a heavy weight pressing down on Jake's chest. He felt his breath catch, panic surging within him. He had destroyed their reproductive system, an entire species thrown into chaos because of his reckless decision. "I didn't know," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I didn't mean to." "Your intentions are irrelevant," the Zori leader interrupted, its voice chilling. "The consequences of your actions are all that matter." Guilt churned in Jake's stomach. He had never intended for this to happen. The gravity of his actions settled heavily on his shoulders, an unbearable burden. "I'm sorry," he pleaded, desperation lacing his voice. "Sorry will not restore our kind," the leader replied coldly. "You'll atone for your crime in the only way you can." Jake's heart raced as confusion and fear flooded his mind. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice trembling. Another Zori stepped forward, holding a small silver vial filled with a glowing violet liquid. Jake's pulse quickened at the sight. "This is a serum," the leader explained. "It will enhance your reproductive instincts, making you capable of mating with our females. You will serve as the tool to restore what you have taken from us." Jake's blood ran cold. "You can't be serious," he gasped, panic gripping him. "I'm not. I won't do that." The Zori leader's gaze remained impassive. "You have no choice." With a swift motion, the other alien injected the serum into Jake's arm. The effects were immediate. Heat surged through his body, racing through his veins like liquid fire. His muscles tensed, his skin prickling with heightened sensitivity. His heart pounded in his chest, and a strange, primal desire began to rise within him, overpowering his thoughts and clouding his mind. "No," he gasped, struggling against the restraints, but it was too late. The serum had taken hold, and the last thing Jake saw before his vision blurred was the cold, unfeeling gaze of the Zori leader. "You will serve," it said, its voice echoing in Jake's mind, "and there will be no escape." As darkness enveloped him, Jake realized he was trapped in a nightmare of his own making. The line between his humanity and the alien desires being forced upon him was about to blur, and the true test of his will had only just begun. The awakening desire. Jake Hayes awoke in darkness, his mind swirling with confusion and fear. He was no longer bound, but the remnants of the serum coursed through his veins, igniting a strange fire within him. The sterile white light that had greeted him before was now replaced by shadows, deep and oppressive. As he blinked against the dimness, he could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him, a reminder of his predicament. His surroundings were unfamiliar. He lay on a smooth surface, cool and unyielding beneath him, with faint humming sounds resonating in the air. It took him a moment to adjust, but the unsettling realization that he was no longer alone sent a shiver down his spine. Slowly, Jake pushed himself up, his body still feeling heavy and sluggish. As he sat up, he noticed he was in what appeared to be a circular chamber, its walls adorned with sleek, metallic panels that glimmered faintly in the dim light. Strange symbols, similar to those on the obelisk, were etched into the surface, pulsating softly like the heartbeat of some ancient beast. "Get a grip, Hayes," he muttered to himself, trying to shake off the lingering effects of the serum. He had to think clearly. He needed a plan. Panic surged through him as he recalled the Zori leader's words, the impending doom that hung over him like a storm cloud. Before he could gather his thoughts, the door on the far side of the chamber slid open with a soft hiss, revealing two Zori females. They glided into the room, their movements fluid and graceful, as if defying gravity. The deeper blue of their skin contrasted starkly against the metallic environment, their forms mesmerizing yet menacing. Their large black eyes locked onto him, devoid of emotion, examining him like an object rather than a being. Jake's heart raced as they approached, the pressure inside him mounting in response to their presence. The serum, still raging through his system, began to alter his perceptions, twisting his instincts into something primal and uncontrollable. He fought against it, trying to assert his will, but the heat surged again, washing over him like a tide. "You are awake," the taller Zori said, her voice soft but commanding. "You are responding well to the serum." "Response," Jake echoed, the words slipping from his lips. "What have you done to me?" "You will fulfill your purpose," the second Zori replied, her gaze scanning his body with a predatory intensity. "The serum enhances your reproductive instincts, aligning your desires with ours." "No," Jake shouted, panic rising within him. He could feel the heat building inside, igniting a hunger he fought desperately to suppress. "This isn't right. I'm not a tool." "You are precisely that," the taller Zori responded, her tone unwavering. "Your previous actions have rendered you a necessary instrument for our survival. Accept this fate, and your experience will be pleasurable." Jake struggled to control his breathing as their words settled over him like a heavy cloak. Pleasure. He felt sick at the thought. These aliens viewed him as a mere vessel, a means to an end. But the serum's effects gnawed at him, creating a rift between his mind and body. He could feel the influence creeping in, twisting his thoughts, making the notion of surrendering seem tempting, even against his will. "You will come with us," the taller Zori commanded, her voice cutting through his spiraling thoughts. Before he could protest, they stepped closer, their presence overwhelming. With a mixture of fear and resistance, Jake rose to his feet. His body responded to their commands, the serum's influence rendering him compliant. The oppressive heat continued to build, intensifying with every moment he spent in their presence. He wanted to escape, to run far from this twisted reality, but something primal within him urged him to stay, to yield. The Zori led him through a series of corridors, the walls alive with pulsating lights that seemed to guide their path. Jake felt as though he were trapped in a dream, each step dragging him deeper into a nightmare of servitude. As they walked, he caught glimpses of other chambers, each filled with the same shimmering alien light, the same haunting symbols etched into the surfaces. It was as if he were wandering through the bowels of a living entity, pulsing and breathing. Finally, they arrived at a large chamber, its ceiling soaring high above. The walls were lined with more Zori, all watching him with the same cold, emotionless gaze. In the center stood an elaborate structure, a platform surrounded by a series of glowing orbs that hovered above it, bathing the space in ethereal light. "Welcome," the tall Zori said, gesturing toward the platform. "You will begin your role here." "What do you want from me?" Jake demanded, his voice filled with defiance. He felt the urge to fight, to resist the overwhelming tide of the serum's influence. "Your cooperation," she replied, her tone unyielding. "You will make our females, restoring what you have taken. It is the only way to atone for your actions. No, he shouted, anger surging through him. I refuse to be your pawn. The room fell silent, the other Zori observing him with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. The tall Zori stepped forward, her expression unreadable. You will be given a choice. Submit willingly, or the serum will be adjusted to ensure compliance. Jake's stomach dropped at the implication. They would intensify the serum's effects, forcing him into submission if he didn't comply. It was a horrifying prospect, but even as he fought against the urge to yield, he could feel the heat inside him flaring, the primal instinct warring with his human sensibilities. Is this what it's come to? He asked, his voice trembling with the weight of his reality. Turning me into a breeding tool for your kind. Yes, the tall Zori replied, her voice devoid of compassion. It is necessary for our survival. You are a means to an end. This is not personal. It is survival. The coldness of her words struck him harder than any weapon could. He was trapped in a nightmare where his humanity meant nothing. He wanted to fight, to escape, but the reality of his situation loomed like a shadow over him. Before he could gather his thoughts, the second Zori stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as she assessed his resolve. You will begin now, she commanded, her voice smooth yet filled with authority. Do not resist. Embrace your role, and you may find fulfillment in ways you cannot yet comprehend. Jake felt the heat flare again, but this time he steeled himself against it. He had to hold on to his identity, his humanity, no matter the cost. As the Zori closed in, he took a deep breath, preparing himself for whatever came next. He wouldn't let them take his will. He wouldn't allow them to erase his humanity. But as the Zori reached for him, he felt the heat surge again, threatening to consume him. In that moment, a flicker of doubt crept into his mind. Could he truly resist? Could he retain his sense of self in a world where everything was designed to strip it away? The battle within him raged, and as the Zori advanced, he knew that this was only the beginning. The true test of his will, his resolve, and his humanity lay ahead, and he would need every ounce of strength to navigate the treacherous path laid before him. The line between survival and surrender was blurred, and Jake was determined to find a way to reclaim his life from the clutches of this alien fate. The bond of will. Jake stood in the expansive chamber, heart racing, as the Zori closed in around him. Their presence was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, an alien beauty wrapped in an aura of control that felt suffocating. He fought to maintain his composure, his mind racing with thoughts of escape and defiance. The taller Zori, with her commanding gaze, stepped forward, and the other Zori formed a circle around him, their expressions cold and unyielding. You must understand the gravity of your situation, she began, her voice smooth yet authoritative. You are in a position to restore balance to our species, a role that has been thrust upon you due to your actions. Restoring balance. Jake scoffed, his voice trembling with anger and confusion. You mean forcing me to breed like some kind of animal? The Zori leader did not flinch at his words. We are a species on the brink of extinction. Your reckless destruction of the obelisk has left thousands of our females infertile. This is not merely a desire. It is a necessity for our survival. You are the only human capable of fulfilling this role. Necessary for your survival, he echoed, his voice laced with disbelief. I didn't ask for this. I'm not some resource to be exploited. The circle of Zori shifted slightly, their attention unwavering. The taller one maintained her cool demeanor, her large black eyes fixed on Jake with an intensity that felt as if they could see through him. Your resistance is futile. The serum will ensure compliance if you refuse to accept your new role. However, embracing your fate may offer you a different experience, one filled with pleasure and satisfaction. The words hung in the air like a weight, pressing down on Jake's resolve. He could feel the serum still raging within him, trying to drown out his thoughts, blurring the lines between his humanity and the primal instincts awakened by the injection. He refused to let them break him, to let them manipulate him into submission. He would not surrender. I won't give in, he declared, his voice steadying as he took a step back. You can't force me into something I don't want. On the contrary, human, the leader replied, a hint of amusement flickering in her eyes. You already feel the serum's effects altering your perceptions. The more you resist, the more pleasurable your surrender will become. We have a bond, you and I, one that transcends species. It is an opportunity for you to experience existence in a way you cannot fathom. Jake felt a surge of frustration as he shook his head, desperately trying to drown out the heat pooling in his body. This isn't some twisted fantasy. I'm not a part of your species, and I won't become one. You don't understand what it means to be human. The Zori leader tilted her head slightly, as if contemplating his words. We understand more than you realize. The essence of life, of survival, transcends your cultural constructs. You will learn that surrender does not mean the loss of self. Rather, it can be an awakening of deeper instincts, an expansion of your being. The chamber pulsed with a soft, rhythmic glow, matching the beating of Jake's heart. The Zori moved closer, the heat inside him rising as their presence intensified. The leader extended a hand, her fingers delicate yet firm, a gesture of invitation rather than force. You will find fulfillment in our connection. Allow yourself to feel the bond we share, and you may discover strength in unity. As he stared into her dark eyes, Jake felt a strange tug at the edges of his consciousness. There was something almost magnetic about her presence, a compelling force that pulled at him, urging him to yield. He took a deep breath, trying to center himself amidst the chaos swirling within him. No, he whispered, shaking his head again. I refuse to be part of your plan. I won't lose myself to this. Very well, she replied, her voice cool and detached. If you choose resistance, we shall adapt. The serum can be modified to ensure compliance, to amplify your desires until they become your reality. Before he could respond, the other Zori moved in closer, their presence a blend of allure and threat. They surrounded him, their eyes shimmering with an unsettling intensity, their expressions unwavering. A wave of anxiety washed over him, battling with the primal urges ignited by the serum. Jake felt his pulse quicken as the heat surged again, almost overwhelming his senses. The primal instincts within him began to clash with his human will. He clenched his fists, determined to maintain his autonomy. You can't force me into this, he repeated, more to himself than to them. But the Zori were not deterred. The leader stepped back, allowing the others to close in. Then we shall see how long your resistance lasts, she declared. Prepare yourself, human. Jake felt a rush of adrenaline as he braced himself for what was to come. He wasn't going to let them win. He would fight with every ounce of strength he had. But as the Zori advanced, he felt the seductive pull of the serum begin to overshadow his thoughts, whispering promises of release and pleasure that felt increasingly tempting. The Zori reached out to him, their fingers brushing against his skin, sending a jolt of energy through him. The sensation was electrifying, igniting a fire that coursed through his body. Embrace it, the taller Zori urged, her voice a sultry whisper. Feel the bond we share, the power it holds. In that moment, Jake stood at a crossroads. The desire surged within him, fueled by the serum, battling against his human instincts to fight back. He could feel the primal urges battling for dominance, twisting his thoughts into a cacophony of confusion. Would he yield to their control, becoming something he feared, or would he find a way to maintain his humanity amidst the storm? As the Zori continued to encircle him, Jake realized the struggle within him was not just about physical survival. It was about identity and existence itself. He could either succumb to the desires that the serum had awakened or fight against the overwhelming tide threatening to engulf him. With every fiber of his being, Jake sought clarity in the chaos, his resolve strengthening as he took a step back. I will not be your pawn, he declared, his voice filled with determination. You may have injected me with this serum, but you cannot erase who I am. The Zori paused, surprise flickering across their features, momentarily breaking their synchronized movements. The tall leader stepped forward again, her expression shifting from cold authority to something more curious. "You are stronger than most humans we have encountered," she admitted, a hint of intrigue in her tone. "But strength is not merely resistance, it is the ability to adapt and grow." Jake swallowed hard, fighting against the swelling desire that throbbed within him. "I don't want to adapt to your will. I want to find a way out of this." The Zori leader's gaze narrowed, and the air around them seemed to thicken. "Escape is not an option, human. You must understand that your choices are limited. Either embrace the bond we can create or suffer the consequences of continued resistance." "What consequences?" he challenged, his heart pounding in his chest. "What are you going to do? Turn me into a mindless breeding machine?" Her lips curled into a faint smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "The serum is merely the beginning. You have not yet experienced the full extent of its capabilities. Continued defiance will only lead to adjustments. You will either learn to embrace your desires or be forced to submit to them." As she spoke, Jake felt the heat surge again, overwhelming him with a mix of confusion and fear. He had to hold on to his will, his identity, but the seductive pull of the serum beckoned, whispering promises of pleasure that felt increasingly difficult to resist. "I won't let you take me," he shouted, steeling himself against the rising tide of instinct. "I'm not just some creature to be used. I'm a human being." The Zori exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. The leader stepped closer, her eyes reflecting a flicker of something, perhaps understanding or curiosity. "You fight against a current you cannot see, human, but we offer you a choice. Surrender willingly, and you may find strength in unity." Jake hesitated, the internal battle raging within him. Could there be strength in submission? Could he still retain his humanity while embracing this bond? The heat in his veins surged again, almost as if the serum was feeding off his turmoil, pushing him toward an answer he wasn't ready to accept. I need time to think," he stammered, desperation creeping into his voice. "Time is a luxury we cannot afford," the Zori leader replied firmly. "But know this, the longer you resist, the more painful your submission will be when it comes." Jake clenched his fists, feeling trapped between a rock and a hard place. "I won't be your tool," he asserted, but the words felt weaker, faltering against the weight of the desire rising within him. The leader took a step back, a small gesture of respect for his will, but her expression remained unwavering. "We shall see, human. The choice is yours, but know that the clock is ticking. Your fate, and that of our species, hangs in the balance." As the Zori retreated, leaving Jake alone in the chamber, he felt the weight of their words settle over him like a shroud. The internal struggle raged on, the desire warring against his humanity, a battle that would determine not just his fate, but the fate of an entire species. In the silence that followed, Jake took a deep breath, steeling himself for the fight ahead. He would not allow them to erase who he was. He would find a way to navigate this alien world, to uncover the secrets that lay hidden within the Zori's desires, and ultimately reclaim his life from the brink of despair. The battle for his identity had only just begun, and he was determined to emerge victorious. The trials of submission. Jake stood alone in the dimly lit chamber, the pulsating lights around him casting eerie shadows on the walls. The Zori had left him with a heavy weight pressing down on his chest, part fear, part resolve. He could still feel the remnants of the serum coursing through his veins, a constant reminder of the primal urges battling for control within him. It was a war between his humanity and the overpowering influence of the alien substance, and he was determined to fight. He paced the small space, his thoughts racing as he tried to devise a plan. The Zori had made it clear that his actions had dire consequences, not just for him, but for their entire species. They needed him to restore their reproductive capabilities, to mate with their females, and in doing so, replenish their numbers. He shuddered at the thought, but he also recognized the reality of their situation. If they were as desperate as they claimed, there had to be a way to negotiate, some alternative that didn't involve surrendering his will. Suddenly, the door slid open again, and the tall Zori leader stepped inside, flanked by several other females. The atmosphere shifted as they entered, an electric tension filling the air. The leader regarded Jake with her piercing black eyes, and he could feel the weight of her gaze, assessing him as if he were both a threat and an opportunity. "Are you prepared to embrace your role?" she asked, her voice smooth yet laced with authority. "I'm not going to be your pawn," Jake replied defiantly, crossing his arms over his chest. "There has to be another way." The leader tilted her head slightly, her expression inscrutable. "You misunderstand the nature of our bond. This is not merely about reproduction. It is about unity and survival. You are part of something greater now, whether you accept it or not." "Part of something," Jake scoffed. "I'm a human being, not some tool to be used for your convenience." Her gaze hardened. "You are both, Jake. Your defiance is admirable, but ultimately, it will lead to suffering, not just for you, but for our species. We do not wish to harm you. We wish to create a symbiotic relationship." "What does that even mean?" Jake challenged, his voice rising in frustration. "How can I trust anything you say?" The Zori leader stepped closer, her demeanor shifting slightly, revealing a hint of vulnerability beneath her cold exterior. "Trust is built over time, but you must first understand the trials you will face. If you choose to resist, the serum will amplify your desires until they consume you. We are offering you a chance to engage in this process willingly, to explore what it means to bond with us." Jake felt a mix of intrigue and horror at her words. The notion of bonding, of creating a connection, felt both alluring and terrifying. He could feel the heat within him rising, urging him to explore the possibilities, yet every fiber of his being screamed for him to resist. "Why should I believe you?" he asked, his voice steadier now, but the heat continued to pulse under his skin. "Because," she replied, her voice dropping to a softer tone, "the alternative is a loss of self, a fate worse than death. We do not wish to erase you, Jake. We want to understand you, to learn from you as you learn from us." "Understand me," he echoed, skepticism heavy in his tone. "You can't just expect me to give in because it's convenient for you." The leader's expression shifted, a flicker of something akin to sympathy crossing her features. "We do not expect you to submit without understanding the consequences. We will allow you to experience the serum's effects fully. Only then can you make an informed choice." "Experience the serum," he repeated, confusion mingling with dread. "What does that entail?" "Allow us to show you," she said, gesturing for the other Zori to step closer. "We will guide you through the trials, and you will see the potential that lies within you. There is power in submission, in understanding the true nature of desire." Before he could voice his protests, the Zori females surrounded him, their presence overwhelming. Jake felt a surge of heat as their hands brushed against him, the touch both foreign and strangely enticing. "This is not a punishment," the leader said, her voice a soothing whisper. "It is an awakening." As they began to interact with him, the serum intensified, flooding his senses with sensations he had never experienced before. Their hands were warm, their movements graceful and fluid. Jake's body responded instinctively, the heat within him flaring as they caressed his skin, awakening something deep inside, a primal yearning that battled with his rational mind. "Resist as long as you wish," the leader murmured, her voice weaving through the haze of desire that clouded his thoughts. "But understand that every moment of resistance only strengthens the pull of the serum." Jake fought to maintain control, to keep his mind clear amidst the rising tide of instinct. He couldn't let them break him, couldn't allow himself to succumb to the desire that burned within him. But the more he resisted, the more intense the sensations became, pulling him toward a precipice he was terrified to approach. As they continued, the Zori leader's gaze bore into him, challenging him to confront the truth he was desperate to avoid. "You are not just human, Jake. You are an embodiment of resilience and strength. Embrace your desires, and you may find liberation instead of submission." He took a deep breath, trying to ground himself amidst the swirling chaos. I won't let you take me, he insisted, though his voice wavered. I won't become your tool. Your resolve is admirable, she said, a hint of respect creeping into her tone. But true strength lies in understanding and accepting one's nature. You are caught between two worlds, humanity and Zori. You must navigate this path with courage. The heat surged within him again, and Jake felt his controls slipping. The serum worked like a tide, pushing him toward an acceptance he was not ready to embrace. He could sense the primal energy swirling in the air, a seductive force drawing him closer to the Zori. Fight or embrace, the leader stated, her tone firm. The choice is yours, but know that every moment of hesitation will deepen the influence of the serum. Jake clenched his fists, frustration and desire warring within him. He didn't want to give in, didn't want to become a pawn in their game, but the allure was undeniable. He felt the line between fighting back and surrendering blur, and the conflict raged on inside him. I need to think, he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. There is no time for thought, the leader insisted, her gaze unwavering. You must act. We are here to guide you through this process, but the path forward requires your willingness to explore. The Zori closed in around him, their energy pulsating in harmony with the rhythm of the chamber. Jake felt overwhelmed by their presence, the heat within him reaching a fever pitch. The allure of the bond they offered began to cloud his mind, wrapping around his thoughts like a shroud. Accept the bond, Jake, the leader urged, her voice now a hypnotic cadence. Feel the connection we share. It is powerful, and it can be beautiful. As the heat surged through him, Jake found himself teetering on the edge of surrender. The primal instincts awakened by the serum threatened to consume him, and the seductive pull of the Zori's influence became increasingly difficult to resist. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, attempting to center himself amidst the chaos. Perhaps there is a way to navigate this without losing myself, he thought, desperate for a solution. Maybe I can find a balance. But as he opened his eyes, he saw the Zori watching him intently, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and anticipation. The trial was beginning, and Jake knew that whatever lay ahead would shape not just his fate, but the fate of their species. Then let's begin, he said, surprising himself with the determination in his voice. But on my terms. The Zori leader smiled faintly, a flicker of approval in her eyes. Very well. Your journey begins now, and the choice to yield or resist lies entirely in your hands. Together, we shall explore the depths of desire, and you may yet find strength in submission. As they moved closer, Jake steeled himself for the trials ahead, a mix of fear and curiosity coursing through him. He would face the unknown, not just as a human, but as a being capable of bridging two worlds. The battle for his identity was far from over, and he was determined to emerge from this experience with his humanity intact, no matter the cost. The threshold of understanding. As Jake prepared to embark on this uncharted journey with the Zori, he could feel a strange mix of fear and anticipation stirring within him. He stood at the threshold of an experience that would challenge his very essence, a fusion of humanity and the alien that promised to test his limits. The Zori females encircled him, their shimmering blue skin glowing softly in the chamber's ambient light, a stark contrast to the cold metallic walls. Remember, Jake, the Zori leader said, her voice smooth yet firm. This is not merely a trial of your will. It is an exploration of the bond we can share. We want to understand you, just as you seek to understand us. He nodded, swallowing hard as he glanced at the other Zori. They looked expectant, their dark eyes filled with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. The serum pulsed within him, a constant reminder of the primal instincts it had awakened. It was a heavy weight, a fire that simmered just beneath the surface, threatening to ignite at any moment. What will happen during this trial? Jake asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. How do we begin? The leader smiled, her expression a mixture of warmth and authority. You'll first experience the full effect of the serum. We will guide you through this process. Allow yourself to feel, to connect, and you may discover aspects of yourself that have been dormant until now. Jake's heart raced as he considered her words. And if I resist? What if I don't want to embrace this connection? Then the serum will become your adversary, she replied, her tone unyielding. Resisting its effects will lead to pain and confusion. Surrendering does not mean losing yourself. It means discovering a deeper part of your existence. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. All right, he said finally, determination settling over him. Let's do this. The Zori leader nodded, and the other Zori stepped closer, their hands reaching out to him with a fluid grace. As their fingers made contact with his skin, Jake felt a rush of warmth flood through him, the sensations amplifying with every gentle caress. The heat within him swelled, merging with the alien energy that surrounded him, creating an intoxicating blend that sent his senses into overdrive. Focus on the connection, the leader urged, her voice a calming presence amidst the rising tide of desire. Feel our energy mingling with yours. Let it guide you. As the Zori continued their ministrations, Jake closed his eyes, allowing himself to be enveloped by the sensations. The serum surged through his veins, awakening every nerve ending, amplifying every touch until he felt as if he were electrified. He had fought against it for so long, but now, as the warmth enveloped him, he began to wonder if perhaps there was something to be gained from this experience. In the depths of his mind, he could feel the walls of resistance beginning to crack. The primal instincts ignited by the serum whispered seductive promises, luring him deeper into a realm of uncharted sensations. He fought to maintain his focus, but it became increasingly difficult as the heat intensified, wrapping around him like a silken shroud. Let go, Jake, the leader coaxed, her voice a soothing balm against the chaos. Allow yourself to experience the bond we can create. It is not merely physical, it is emotional, spiritual. Together, we can explore the depths of our existence. Jake's heart raced, caught between the fear of surrender and the allure of the unknown. He had spent so long fighting against what was being forced upon him, but now, as he let himself succumb to the sensations, a flicker of curiosity sparked within him. What if there was something beautiful to be discovered in this bond? What if he could find a way to navigate this new reality without losing himself? With each passing moment, the Zori's touches became more deliberate, their fingers dancing across his skin in intricate patterns. He felt the energy of their presence intertwining with his own, creating a symphony of sensations that resonated deep within him. The heat surged, threatening to overwhelm him, but Jake took a deep breath, grounding himself in the experience. I want to understand, he murmured, the words slipping from his lips as if they were a silent vow. I want to know what this connection can truly be. The leader smiled, her eyes reflecting a mixture of approval and encouragement. Then allow us to show you. Embrace the bond and let it guide you toward understanding. As he opened his eyes, Jake could see the Zori females surrounding him, their expressions shifting from cold detachment to something more genuine. They were no longer mere instruments of control. They were beings with their own desires, fears, and hopes. In that moment, he felt a shift within himself, a willingness to explore the depths of this connection. The trial continued, and the sensations intensified. Jake felt the energy coursing through him, igniting a fire that spread from his fingertips to his core. The Zori moved in perfect synchrony, their touches becoming more intimate, their energies blending in a way that felt both foreign and familiar. Feel the rhythm of our connection, the leader urged, her voice weaving through the haze of desire. We are not so different, you and I. We all seek understanding, companionship, and the fulfillment of our instincts. As their energies intertwined, Jake began to sense the depths of their desires, an overwhelming longing for connection, for survival, for the restoration of their species. He felt their pain, their desperation, and in that moment, he understood the gravity of their situation. They were not merely using him. They were seeking a way to bridge the gap between their worlds. The heat within him flared, but this time it felt different. Instead of overwhelming him, it ignited a sense of purpose, a desire to connect and share in their plight. Jake realized that he could be a part of something greater, a connection that transcended the boundaries of species, a union born out of necessity but infused with the potential for understanding and growth. As the trial progressed, he let go of his fears, allowing the Zori to guide him deeper into this experience. The sensations became more profound, awakening a sense of unity he had never known before. He was no longer merely a human thrust into an alien world. He was becoming a part of something vibrant and alive. "Embrace it, Jake," the leader encouraged, her voice filled with a warmth that cut through the haze of desire. "You are beginning to understand." With each moment, the bond strengthened, weaving a tapestry of shared existence that connected them in ways Jake had never thought possible. He felt the heartbeat alongside his, their desires resonating with his own. It was a connection that transcended the physical, an intertwining of souls that brought with it an overwhelming sense of belonging. But as he surrendered to the experience, a small voice in the back of his mind warned him of the consequences. He was still at a precipice, balancing on the edge of surrender and resistance. The Zori had shown him a glimpse of what could be, but the lingering threat of the Serum's power remained ever-present. "What happens if I embrace this bond fully?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper, filled with uncertainty. "Will I lose myself in the process?" The leader's gaze softened, a flicker of empathy illuminating her dark eyes. "You will not lose yourself, Jake. You will discover the depths of your existence, the potential for growth and connection that lies within you. The bond we create will not erase who you are, it will enhance it." Taking a deep breath, Jake let her words wash over him. Perhaps embracing this bond was not the end of his identity, but rather a new beginning, a chance to forge a connection that could transcend the differences between them. He was still Jake Hayes, a human with his own desires and dreams, but now he had the opportunity to explore a partnership that could reshape his understanding of existence. As he closed his eyes, surrendering to the sensations that coursed through him, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. The heat within him no longer felt like a threat. It was a promise of something beautiful, a journey toward understanding that could redefine the nature of his reality. With a newfound determination, Jake opened his eyes, locking gazes with the Zori leader. "I'm ready to explore this bond," he declared, his voice steady and resolute. "I want to learn what it means to be connected to you and your people." The leader smiled, a genuine warmth radiating from her. "Then let us continue, Jake. Together, we will traverse the threshold of understanding and explore the depths of our connection." As the Zori resumed their movements around him, Jake felt the fire within him ignite anew, propelling him into an exploration of desire, identity, and unity that would challenge everything he thought he knew about himself and the universe around him. The journey ahead promised to be fraught with challenges, but for the first time, he felt hopeful, ready to face whatever lay beyond the horizon of understanding.